Hey friends, once again on our podcast today, so many things to talk about and so little time to talk about it. Lots of great things happening from a biblical worldview perspective as it relates to the elections, teachable moments, lessons that we can learn, and we're talking about cabinet appointments and all kinds of important things that are happening that are going to impact all of us. And so Pastor Andrew and I are going to touch on some of these things again from a biblical perspective. We hope you'll take the time to tune in and enjoy the fun today.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
And we have a beehive of activity here in our building. Hey, Eric. I just said we have a beehive of activity, and there you are. We're doing electric.
And paint.
We're doing lights. We're doing new stuff. All right. There we go. I told you we have a beehive of activity here this morning. Actually, right to our left is where the nursery pre-K new kids wing is, and I see paint coming on the walls, which is really going to be exciting. We've got a lot of our decor being done here in the foyer, which is really, really cool. And I don't think they can hear this, Matthew, but out in the parking lot, south parking lot, we got heavy equipment operating. I saw they were pouring columns for looks like for light poles and stuff like that. Anyway.
Yeah, I know it's not sexy, but my most exciting project is the second exit.
Yeah.
After years and years of congestion.
I think anybody who worships here with us would be saying a big amen.
That's Aaron and I are like out there, you know.
Next to the election outcome is parking lot exit.
Well, I don't know. The parking lot exit might be up there.
Might be even ahead.
That's his word. That's our mental state.
Yes. A lot happens. So if you hear some drills and doors and all that kind of stuff, it's because good things are happening here at Living Stones. And good things are happening in our nation. A lot going on. We'll get into the Senate leadership election, that'll be coming up soon. In fact, I think
they're voting right now.
And Mr. Trump is supposed to be addressing the Senate, I guess, this morning at some point to share his thoughts. But anyway, very, very cool. And I think it's last time we were doing our podcast, we were not sure about the House. It looked good, but we now have the presidency, the Senate. And the House. And I again felt like Sunday I shared a teachable moment that I just want to reiterate. It's amazing how you could be looking at 4 more years of continued economic collapse, tyranny in terms of attacking, our liberties, pushing this radical trans agenda, all of the heavy-handed government overreach, including right before the election, euthanizing a pet squirrel in New York. That to me was one of the
and a raccoon, I believe.
And a raccoon. That was one of the epitomes of. Why is government tormenting people by going to their home and killing their pet squirrel? It's small on the one hand and insignificant, but yes, it's a microcosm of a bigger problem. So we were facing, and we talked about this, we were facing some serious threats to our way of American life here, and then to think right after one election. We're looking at really, as some have pointed out, a 2-year window of incredible opportunity, for sure, maybe longer, but for sure a 2-year window to really reverse things. And I guess the teachable moment for me was we cannot sit back as Christians and either don't vote or plug our nose and we're not going to vote for either candidate because they're both flawed, and we're not going to get involved in elections, and we're not going to play politics, and all of these things that you and I have talked about. But to me, this is like the moment where you go, hey guys, don't succumb to the doom and gloom and focus on the devil and lose on our nation. And this is supposed to happen. The Bible warns us this is going to happen, and all that kind of talk. When it's like, come on, we have the greatest opportunity right now that I've seen in a long time, at least on the public policy front. Obviously, there's more to life than public policy, but I'm just encouraged. And I think especially for our church. and what we're preaching about the kingdom, this is one of those moments to go, guys, look at this. This is awesome. Let's make sure we get even more involved and more aggressively engaged in what's happening because we can make a difference.
Yeah. And public policy does make a tremendous difference on our personal lives and our professional lives.
You can't ignore it.
So it's not like, oh, it's compartmentalized. No, it's nothing's really compartmentalized in our age. I look at what's going on in our nation, kind of like the stock market. There's ups and there's downs. But if you look at over long term, there's always trending up.
Yep.
My eschatology, my belief, my view is that the kingdom of God expands over and over and over again. When Daniel had the prophecy, when he saw the different beast, the very last was the kingdom of God, and there was no beast coming after that. It was the unnatural rock established by Jesus Christ. Now, are there ups and downs when you zoom in? Yeah, there are ups and there are downs in our daily lives. There's ups and there are downs. There's discouragement. There's encouragements. But over the long trend, my eschatology teaches that the reign of Christ will only grow. Now, I'm not equating that necessarily directly to what's going on in the election per se, but that is my perspective. So it's an optimistic view.
That shades your filter, so to speak.
Right.
If you're expecting things to always get worse, then you're going to be pessimistic, negative. You're going to have this perspective that, well, yeah, this is good now, but but if you actually believe that the influence of the gospel over time is going to touch nations like the Great Commission that the Lord's given us, that we will be successful, then we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get going here, In fact, it's kind of neat, in 2026, and I want to make sure Living Stones prepares for this, but that's our 250th birthday as a nation. And I heard like the end time, gloomsayers, so to speak, saying, well, there's the United States isn't mentioned in end time prophecy or comments like that. And I always scratch my head like, so what? There's a lot of nations that aren't mentioned in end time prophecy. What does that mean? I mean, we've been going for 250 years. Why can't we not have greater impact, greater glory, greater greatness as a nation, greater unity? I mean, these things are not outside the reach of God's possibilities, So anyway, I thought this is just a good time to say, come on, and I agree with you. Let's have a victorious view of Jesus and the church, and not a pessimistic doom and gloom view. The other thing I want to touch on that I think is worth talking about, and you mentioned this, when we get a strong leader elected, I guess nobody could say Donald Trump is not strong, at least in his opinions, his leadership. In fact, that would probably be considered by many to be his weaknesses. He's too strong or not kind enough or whatever, which I don't agree with. But anyway, look at what has happened as soon as and he's not even been sworn in, right? Nations lining up in terms of wanting meetings, backing off of certain positions, nations kicking out Hamas and Hezbollah from their country. They're distancing themselves from anything that they would think the United States would not like or that Mr. Trump would not like. The economy, stock market responded. It's just like strength is peace, and when you find a strong leader coming in, it's amazing what that person can do. And I think it's a testimony of what Donald Trump has done in the past and what we're anticipating he's going to do under his leadership for the next 4 years. So again, that is also a biblical principle here, that when leaders lead, it brings peace and stability to the nation, and I'm very excited to see a lot of these things happening. I don't know what I saw a whole list of things that had happened. Maybe you saw that as well. But.
Yeah, I did, and after a while, I'm like, I can't even process all these things. There's so many of these moves. The writing's on the wall for many different people, for some of these nations to say, hey, it's time for us to negotiate peace, or it's time for us to collaborate and work together. Peace, strength brings peace. I think about a household, like a family.
Yep.
What brings peace to a household is a strong dad. Right. Not a violent, not an angry, I'm not talking about like an abusive.
Right.
But a dad that is caring and loving, but you also recognize he is in charge. He is not, he's not pushover. Let's say it this way. I recognize that
he's
myself,
engaged,
caring. But when the kids are stepping out of line, he is not shy about saying, no, you will not cross that line. And so, we all can well, at least I experienced that. I'm sure you have experienced that in your household.
I
as
had a very
pastors,
strong father, absolutely.
we engage that. So how much more for a nation? For a state or for a community.
Yeah. So we're talking as well about, I love to hear the leadership saying, hey, we're going to hit the ground running. And some of the things that I've heard is day one, secure the border. And again, this isn't a hard fix. It's just that there's not been people with the willingness, to do what needed to be done. It's become a political issue, and I think Americans have had enough, and that were strong on this. They've had enough of all these folks being bussed into communities and dropped off, and the raping and pillaging and violence, and some of the folks that are coming. Of course, that's not everybody, but the whole notion being you need to get back to the rule of law and come into this country legally, and you need to be vetted. This is not inhumane. This is actually very humane. It's the rule of law. It brings order. It brings peace. It brings stability. And that was going to be priority number one, day number one, secure the border.
I saw a clip on X. So I've gotten onto X after years of being off, and I'm like inundated all kind of news. There was a lady, I don't even know whose name it is, on The View saying how it's fundamentally unfair if you're allowing illegals come in where you have a line for all the legal immigrants who are waiting patiently in their country or whatever it is, or even they're in the, whatever. It's fundamentally unfair.
Yeah,
and most people understand that. It was from the lady from The View. I'm like, wow, even there's even common sense penetrating to
And I
that
saw
show.
a clip from former President Barack Obama, who was saying everything that the most conservative Republican would be saying right now, that you need to come into, immigration is a good thing, but you need to come into our country legally. I mean, this used to be the talking points of the Democratic Party. I don't know how we lost all of that, and I have no idea how an open border in any way promotes virtue, goodness, blessing. I don't understand even the philosophy behind open border movements. But anyway, this is a good thing. I saw also the new director, the border czar, Tom Homan, being grilled by AOC. All right, this was back when they were having the border issues, and she was trying to say his policies were the reason that we're separating children from their parents, and he said no. The reason children are getting separated from their parents is because you guys haven't closed the border. That's why we're having these problems. And he said if you commit a crime, you go to jail. You're the husband in your family, and you commit a crime. Yes, you're being separated from your family because you're a criminal. That's what happens all the time. When you enter this country illegally, you're a criminal. And he was just very clear about that. So I'm excited to see, somebody who's been on the border for 30-some years, understands the ins and outs of what's happening. I think this is an amazing pick, somebody that knows literally how to fix the border like that. And if there's the political will behind it, we'll have a secure border, which will be a big help.
And I think what he was saying is there are so many people who are criminals. They are really supposed to be deported. They haven't been deported yet. I mean, that's like the prime target. Or just criminals who are hurting our current citizens. They're part of gangs that should have been. So I mean, there is so much mess to clean up. We
not to mention morale. I mean, imagine you're a border guard and you catch people entering illegally only to find them go to court or whatever, and then because you got these liberals running the system, they're released back out. And so you risk your life and you go through all this trouble to arrest somebody who's here illegally, and then our own people release them back on the streets. I mean, who wants to serve as a border guard? I mean, nobody wants to live under that kind of situation. So I think everything is going to happen. You're going to find more good people wanting to serve, wanting to protect, wanting to do what's right, which is really, really exciting. Also, talking about wanting to extend the Trump tax cuts that are set to expire in 2025. And I just want to say here, too, why is cutting taxes, why has that become a rich Republican issue that, somehow hurts the poor and hurts the middle class? That's what we hear all the time from Democrats. But cutting taxes, everybody wins when you cut taxes. I mean, would you like to pay less in taxes so you have more money to spend on groceries and your kids and all that kind of stuff? Education, of course you do. So the fact that they're going to reinstate that is going to be a massive, boom to the economy. Because what happens when let's talk about the wealthy. What happens when the wealthy are not being taxed like crazy? They use their money to start businesses, to hire people, to do all kinds of things that actually stimulate the economy. So this is really, really good stuff for anybody with any economic sense. Anytime you cut taxes and you cut regulations, you stimulate economic growth and recovery, which is good for all of us.
People don't understand, like, what often people say, oh, they're just cutting taxes for the billionaires and blah, blah, blah. Well, I get it. There is a corruption to elitists and billionaires. Their unfair advantages. Yes, we should take that away. We need to make sure it's a fair playing field. However, these billionaires and business owners are the infrastructure builders. They take the risk. They have the resolve. They have the tenacity to create businesses, which most people cannot do that. They ought to be compensated for creating that wealth, creating that infrastructure, so that cities and communities can thrive.
And as we pointed out, they're actually the only ones who do create businesses and jobs.
It's not the federal government.
It's not the federal government,
right.
unless it's government jobs, which still we're the ones paying for all those jobs.
It's not the same. These guys are innovating, taking resources, taking materials that no one ever used and convert into something that's valuable and creating value. Like, that is hard. That's hard work. We want to incentivize that and give those guys tax cuts, not punish them for their innovation. Now, if they're cheating and they're bribing people and doing wrong things and whatever, yeah, we need to take care of that. Sure.
Level playing field. And I've always argued that one of the things that we should be doing taxation-wise, I've always been a fan, because this comes from Christian worldview, for a flat tax. Everybody pays this percent. And that way you're not punishing people for being successful. As you said, we're not wanting to incentivize wickedness or corruption. That should be stamped out wherever we find it. But we should incentivize hard work. Again, people who are willing to take the risk to make an investment that might not pay off for 10, 20 years, and they're willing to invest to build that business. They should not be punished for that. And that's exactly what our Democratic friends like to do, is punish people, make you feel guilty for being successful.
So, I study pharmacology in grad school. I have no problem with pharmaceutical companies making a lot of money because they innovate. They have to find a drug that's going to solve, cure cancer or whatever it is. Right. They have to do tons of tests, tons of, risk. I have no problem in getting incentivized with tax cuts to find better medicine. Right. I do have a problem when they give bribes to, governmental officials who, after a few years, come work for them.
Or the media, like they're pointing out, when you're paying, millions and millions of dollars to advertise your product on a certain channel, and then
so they would never come and question your practices.
Sure, because there's too much money.
We need to get rid of that. We need to get rid of these regulatory agencies who all come work for these large pharma companies after they finish their governmental duties. Right. There's something wrong with that picture, right? We need to get rid of that. So that's different from just incentivizing great companies to innovate and have great products.
Yeah, for instance, someone who goes through med school and incurs a lot of debt and a lot of hard work, and you're like, well, look at that person. Look how much money they're making, and you don't realize the amount of debt they incurred to get where they're at and the hard work that they invested to be there. And we just have this politics of envy, right, where we're going to be jealous because you make more. So what happens when we make it harder to make money? We have more regulations, and then people go, why would I want to be a doctor when I could just be a X, Y, or Z that requires no education, no training, no indebtedness? It doesn't make any sense if I'm not going to make a living or be able to make a living after all the sacrifice I've invested. So you find people that just quit on the system because the government's going to take care of you, and what difference does it make anyway? Why should I put myself out like that? It's a terrible thing. It really just squashes American innovation and growth and all of those things that, like someone like, for instance, Elon Musk, we look at him and go, wow, look at all the crazy things the guy created. Well, because he has the ability to think and to dream, right, and to live out those dreams. And that's the government's job: create the even playing field and then get out of the way, and stop picking winners and losers.
Human innovation and growth and pushing and challenging the status quo and creating value will not be stopped. That push, that desire is so strong. I mean, it's always pushing. You could be in the most draconian environment, and that still is that desire for growth and
That's what
invest
makes
yourself.
you feel alive. It makes you feel
Absolutely.
you're creating the image of God. He's a creator. We're creators.
We're creators, right?
Yeah.
So we just simply need to let that flow, encourage. How about just get out of the way?
Yep.
That innovation will grow. Now there are some nations that after decades of just oppressive policy, they can't dream anymore. That is not America.
No.
Americans will dream.
And if there's one thing that's been concluded as a result of this election is the fact that this whole campaign based on identity politics, right? Trans issues, systemic racism, all of these types of things. This was an epic failure. I mean, I think it's really insulting when we tell somebody of a different pigmentation that you're never going to get ahead in America. You don't have opportunities. You're going to be a victim of the system. Blah 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 blah. It's a very defeating message, and we saw this didn't really work with the voters either. I saw we remember Bill Clinton's famous line on "It's the economy, stupid." He understood that quite simply when you boiled all the cabbage down, so to speak, what it was all about was helping people live and helping the economy be strong. Well, somebody coined the phrase this election cycle, it's the culture, stupid. It didn't matter whether you were conservative or whether you were a Democrat liberal. People understand if they have daughters, for instance. No, I don't want my daughter competing in sports against a transgender man, a biological male. That's not right. I don't want that guy in the locker room with my daughter, even though he feels like he's a woman. He's not. I remember just recently watching some of the Democratic elected officials saying, you know what? One guy said, I have 2 daughters, and I feel like this is wrong. But if I say it, I can't say it because I'm a Democrat, and that's because we've landed on this identity politics issues and stuff like this. But this is just common sense. And it was an epic failure. And even people who were solid in the Democratic camp are like, I can't get on board with this. This was tremendous overreach. Even Bill Clinton, evidently, I don't know if you read that, but even Bill Clinton warned the Harris campaign, this is a bridge way too far for most Americans. They do not want their kids groomed in school. They don't want this disastrous ideology shoved down their kids' throats. But they didn't listen. You can get in that little echo chamber where you're completely blinded to ultimate reality. And this election proved that all that stuff is.
I did see Bill Clinton give that talk. He looked terrible. I don't know if you saw the video.
No, I didn't.
He looked terrible. It's interesting. Of all these guys who become president, I mean, after they become president, they look like a different person. Mm-hmm. All except for Donald Trump. I don't get it. That guy looks like the same way he looked 10 years ago. Like, just doesn't faze him. I don't get it. He has the mutant ability to not be stressed or something. I don't know how that works.
I remember seeing Barack Obama right after his first term and how gray he became just from the stress of the job. I mean, I get it.
It's a stressful. I get it. But right? Like Trump looks the same.
Now, fortunately, we look good every week. We don't age at all.
I'm not the president.
There's this high pressured,
I'm not people trying to assassinate me. That might stress me out a little bit. Yeah.
Now, first of all, another thing about this campaign, this is crazy. You look at, first of all, the crazy amount of money that the Harris-Walz campaign raised, right? Do you know the exact amount?
1.2, 1.3, something like that. Billions. Yeah. Sorry, billions.
The money is staggering. And what's crazy is that campaign is in debt now to the tune of millions.
Yeah, I don't know how much they're in debt for it. Yeah.
But this was crazy. One guy called this the Harris money laundering account. Because think about this. They gave $500,000 to Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton? And she got interviewed by Sharpton, but he's under investigation for all kinds of spending for, this is a not-for-profit that spends millions of dollars on flights and all kinds of stuff that's highly questionable. I mean, if we did that, my goodness, we'd be in jail. $1 million for Oprah, $10 million for Beyonce, $5 million for Megan Thee Stallion.
I've never heard of that before.
Well, I saw.
You know who he is, Matt? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well,
okay.
Hey, Matthew knows all these people.
I've never heard of that
He
before.
even knows the $2.3 million to Lizzo.
Who's Lizzo? Is that a singer? Okay.
And
I got to get back on Twitter.
$1.8 million to Eminem.
I do know who he is.
Okay.
He's a rapper, right?
But the point is, just to show you how fake all of this was, every one of these people was paid for. And now it's interesting because they're talking about this eerie hush that's descended on Hollywood, because perhaps we'll get justice on a lot of these the Diddy tapes and
Epstein's playing.
And from what I'm hearing, everybody who was anybody got invited to the Diddy parties, and there's a lot of films and things that have been captured. So it's interesting to hear Hollywood eerily silent. In fact, I would say most of the Harris Waltz supporters are very, very silent right now. More silent than I anticipated. I'm grateful that we did not see a lot of, chaos and all that kind of stuff he wrote. Praise the Lord for that. But it is interesting that people, I think, are on the edge of their seats wondering when it's all going to hit the fan. And rightfully so. That's how you should be if you're, living a perverted lifestyle, illegal lifestyle.
Well, it's crazy why they have not released well, I guess it's not so crazy, the list of Epstein's playing list, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's the ultimate gaslighting. Like, oh, you guys don't need to know that.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, you're not releasing it because you're probably part of it. Oh, yep. But no, we're not.
And Kennedy, he was challenging Fauci during the whole COVID thing about the lack of trials and the safety and all that kind of stuff. And Fauci told him, you're crazy. And then all of a sudden now it's like, no, Kennedy was right. So again, I don't want to make this sound like this is yay rah Republicans. We know that corruption exists on both sides of the aisle. We're all fallen human beings, and that's something everybody in power has to deal with. We already established that. But we're talking about biblical principles. The biblical principle is good government is transparent. Good government is not full of corruption and lying and all this kind of stuff. And even what we're dealing now on the Republican side with the choice of who's going to, be the successor to Mitch McConnell. McConnell, talk about lack of transparency, and someone who wants to perpetuate that by almost selecting his heir. Unfortunately, that was exposed, and now I hope we have a good turnout there. Someone that's going to support this incredible mandate that Donald Trump was given and work with him instead of somebody trying to constantly undercut him. But anyway, the principle here is transparency, openness, honesty, a government that works for the people, and we just haven't had that.
Yeah, and if you commit these heinous crime, you should be held accountable for that. I mean, in the scriptures when, whether it's David's cry or some of the prophets who just cry out for justice. They're not crying out for justice for one party or this party.
Right.
They just want justice.
Lady Justice is wearing the blindfold, right?
It's just corruption. People are taken advantage of. They either do whatever they want and no one will hold them accountable. I think that's one of my biggest frustrations in the last 4 years, personally.
Well, you
not
in
DNR.
In America.
Just frustrated at people getting away with stuff. I'm not talking about parties. I'm just talking about people in power just do whatever they want. Like, it just grinded me at night. I mean, I go to bed, I'm just like, ugh. I don't even want to be frustrated because I feel so powerless about it. But it just grind at me. So now the possibility that some of these people, not all of them, sure, some of them will be exposed, just kind of breathes new life into my soul. It doesn't do me any direct good. It's not like I'm going to be vindicated. It's not like, but it's just I think it's just human nature. Like, we long for justice to be done.
From a little child up, play by the rules.
Yeah.
Like, you can't play the political game if there's no rules. And people get sick and tired of it. Well, it's rules for you, but not for me. So I think you're tapping in. Like when President Trump called the mainstream media fake news, everybody who watched the hypocrisy was like, yeah, finally somebody telling it to their faces. And some people viewed that as being mean. I was like, thank you. You're a voice for a lot of Americans who wish we could say the same thing.
Well, look what happened in FEMA. Did you hear about what happened in FEMA in Florida?
Oh, yeah.
There was a directive to whatever the FEMA workers to say there's a Trump sign.
Yep.
Don't go to that house.
Yeah, so then they offered the scapegoat like one of the lowly operatives,
Right.
but they're saying no, that directive came from the highest positions of FEMA. So there's people now that are going to go and figure that out, and heads are going to roll.
They
if
should
that happened.
DeSantis they should invest, because I think Trump mentioned that before, and people are like, oh, he's lying, gaslighting, he's whatever. Again, this is my take on this. Justice ought to be done. I can't imagine this FEMA. This is a national disaster. This is horrible. You want to help anyone. I don't care if you have whatever flag in your household.
We're Americans.
This is my job to come help you, and to get a notification to say you cannot go. I would ignore it. I'll be like, what is this? But that drives me nuts. You know, the thought of that in the middle of trauma and hurricanes. So anyway,
and I just saw the John Ratcliffe, the new CIA director. Boy, I'm excited about some of these appointees, because I saw a clip of him during Peter Strzok or whatever that was in charge of 3 investigations, all involving Trump, after he has a phone full of text messages, an FBI issued business phone full of text messages basically attacking effing President Trump.
I did see that video. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ratcliffe just said, and we're supposed to trust you. You said you've kept the clear line, between personal, and he's like, is that a clear line? I mean, he just let him have it in a good way. And these are the kind of things that are, for me, signs that there will be finally justice, because, again, when you're living in a nation where there's a constant double standard, it just demoralizes you. Like, who cares? Why does it matter when they're just going to do whatever they want?
Absolutely.
So anyway, let's talk. We got a little bit of time left here.
There's a lot happening last week.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. So this guy, for instance, in the EPA, this is good news. Rolling back regulations that hurt business and limit economic growth.
Lee Zeldin from New York.
Increasing dealing with energy production in America. We should be a leader in energy production. We're not. Revitalizing the auto industry. Biden said that by 2032, 2/3 of all cars sold had to be electric. What does that do? It drives up the cost. You and I cannot afford to go out and buy a Tesla, Why should we expect that 2/3 of the automobiles are going to be electric? He said Biden instituted 5,000 new regulations costing American households $3,300 annually, increase just in our household expenses, just because of ridiculous regulations. So I love this. You get in there, you put people first, you're going to get rid of these nonsensical regulations, and you're going to stimulate economic growth. You're going to get the big driver of inflation is energy policy. When you create all these alternative energy sources that really are not very effective, and actually in some ways less efficient, you just shoot energy through the roof. And so we're going to get back to fossil fuels again, and some of these things, which again, talk about getting me mad. When I see a government official saying, by the year whatever, you're not going to be able to buy a gas stove, I'm sitting there going, who died and made you king? We don't have kings in this country. And what business do you have as a federal government jumping into the private market and making those decisions unilaterally for the rest of us Americans?
And they don't understand. You can't cook a good fried rice on an electric stove. You need a nice gas stove to get the wok action.
Yeah.
Just lost all the Chinese restaurant
You got
votes.
to have flames, right? Not that little ring, a glowing ring.
I don't know if that's actually true, but in my mind, it makes sense.
Oh, I thought you were speaking from authority right there.
It did sound like it, didn't it?
Man, you had me convinced.
It's probably is true. I imagine.
All right.
Yeah.
So, hey, how about this? I love Mike Huckabee, ambassador to Israel. We finally have somebody who loves Israel.
What a great pick.
And Mike Huckabee's a great guy, all around great guy. You and I were talking about this. Perhaps Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. Governor Kristi Noem, Homeland Security. On that one, it was a kind of a...
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I mean, Trump mentioned like when she was one of the first people who sent troops down to the border to help from Texas.
Okay.
So, I like her. I don't know much about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The only blight on her schedule was, her resume was Evidently there's a medical company in her state that really pushes the whole trans stuff. So she got a little wishy-washy on the trans stuff for a while. I hope she's recovered her senses on that.
Something give me a sense that she has.
Elise Stefanik, Representative Elise Stefanik, ambassador to the UN, and again, a strong supporter of Israel. So, I think to have someone like that at the UN would be great. Pete Hegseth, we talked about, Secretary of Defense. How about this is Department of Government Efficiency? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
You love working in the marketplace.
I love that.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
I think most people love that. I mean, I think Elon Musk was tweeting out about how we spend millions of dollars spraying some rats with some type of urine tests in terms of the waste that we spend on. And sometimes I don't know for sure. I'm not in government. Sometimes I feel like the federal government is a big money laundering scheme. I mean, they talk about porks. That's what it sounds like. There's so much passed in these budget bills. Like, who's actually going through it and figuring out who gets a handout? If I put in there, $400,000 to the Ron Johnson, charity fund for his private plane, no one's going to care. It's one little something out of billion trillions of dollars. I wonder how many of that has happened a million times.
Well, because the system's broken, and this is what, when we're talking about the leader of the Senate, for instance, one of the complaints was that basically both sides of the aisle, so McConnell and Schumer get together, they work out all the deals behind the scenes, and then when they bring it to the floor of the Senate, it's pretty much a done deal. And so Mike Lee was talking about the Senate being the world's greatest deliberative body. In other words, that's the portion of Congress that's supposed to put the brakes on a little bit. The House creates the appropriation for the money behind all this, but the Senate's, that's where you're supposed to stop and go, let's talk about this. Let's have some healthy debate. Let's push from both sides. Let's really think this through before we pass this. And again, just to your point, these funding bills that get run through with all the pork and all the handouts, and you just think, man, what could our country be doing if we just cut out a fraction of the waste?
So you get these three of your lobbyist friends get this funding, but I get these two lobbyist friends get funding,
and we work out because we're on opposite sides of the aisle.
But it's kind of like when the camera's turned off, we're BFFs, we're best friends. But once the camera's on, it's like, oh, I oppose you because of whatever. And I mean, it just sounds like a mob. It sounds like, it doesn't sound like it's really representing people.
So you take people, as you pointed out, that are running businesses that have real consequences to their decisions, right? Yeah. You make a bad choice and your business suffers and you go out of business. I mean, you're broke. The government doesn't operate that way. They just print more money. They just continue, continuing resolution, right? We're just going to print more money and solve the problem, kick the can down the road. Well, you get someone like Musk and Vivek in there, and these are two men who have built successful businesses. They work in the marketplace. They understand that this is the real deal, and they're going to be looking with a fine-tooth comb at some of these things and cleaning up the waste and the duplications of government, offices and all the unnecessary staff. In fact, I'm excited. Republican presidents have talked about this for years, but when Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education, we were number one in the world in education, and now we're 24th. So what good is the Department of Education? It's just another layer of bureaucracy and an intrusion from the federal level into our businesses here at the state level. So
this is a principle to business. As your business grows, it gets more and more complex. So you have to fight for simplicity. Right. Our federal government is the opposite of that principle. As our country grows, we get more and more complex, and the federal government is like, let's make this complexity 10 times as more complex. And so no one knows where anything goes and where any money goes, and if you want to go get a VA treatment, you have to go through this bureaucracy and this bureaucray, and when you pay your taxes, you have to do this and this and this and this and this and this. It's like the opposite of that.
There's no clarity even in the IRS. I mean, on certain things, as far as standards or whatever. So, again, you get a business person's brain looking at things that's different than a politician's.
Well, I'm hoping Elon Musk does too, or our federal government, what he did to Twitter when he bought it. He comes in And he's like, all right, guys, let's start cleaning house.
Well, like Hegseth said too, with the Pentagon, he says it's time for accountability. He goes, when has anybody in the Pentagon ever lost their job? And these are good questions. When you get a government job, then basically you're set for the rest of your life, right? You show up at work, you do your thing. There's no accountability. You get annual raises or whatever. You get a pension. It's all paid for by the American people. But nobody's head ever rolls, so to speak, when there's a major crisis or a major epic failure, like we saw, when we got out of Afghanistan. My goodness, what an epic disaster! And yet there was zero accountability for that. And that's happened over and over and over
well,
again.
You're putting the not as bad side. The worst side is after their government job, after they have done enough favors for their friends, they join from large corrupt corporation, and now they're joining lobbying firm, making crazy money because now they pay their dues doing the favor of their friends, and now they join ship. And come on, that process happens over and over again. Whether you're a congressman, you're administrative staff, or you work for mainstream media, and man, that is corrupt. Man, that makes my blood boil.
Oh, absolutely.
You should be serving the people, not paving your golden parachute.
If you come to Washington and you leave with a greater net worth than you came, you did something illegal. I mean, think about it. Like, how do you come there and government jobs are not high-paying jobs? The public sector does not equal the private sector. So how do you come to Washington and leave a multi-gazillionaire if you did not use your job inappropriately to enrich yourself? And I mean, we could that should be a litmus test. Okay, you came here, you served 2 terms in the House, and you quadrupled your net worth in a public.
Well, I mean, I get it. Some people, because of their stature and whatever, they're invited to become the president of whatever university. That's one thing.
But that's after you leave.
Right, after you leave. But that's what I'm talking about. After you leave, I'm talking about like you're part of some regulatory agency. Your job is the FDA, to regulate a pharmaceutical company. And right after you finish being an FDA agent, you go work for Pfizer for, making $500,000 a year. That is so sketchy in my mind because it could easily be seen as a payout for.
But how about the insider trading that happens all the time when, I didn't make that buy. My husband made that stock purchase. And he made it the day before Congress was going to vote on this important bill that was going to regulate this or regulate that or cause this industry to really take off. That kind of stuff. I mean, people should be going to jail for that. That is just wrong. But again, that's why the biblical principle of accountability and, as you pointed out, justice, evenly applied. That's the role of government. We got to get government.
We need transparency, but we need the people who gives us transparency to actually be transparent. Because they're probably watchdog agency and whistleblowers. But if they're not being transparent, or they're being bought in, or they're being threatened, then that doesn't work out. That's why people are so excited about someone like a Elon Musk or a Vivek, who are outsiders, who have been outspoken. I think people trust them.
They made their money honestly. Same thing with Trump. He made his money, and he's not running for president because he wants to enrich himself. In fact, he's lost money by running for president or serving as president. So that side of it's good. We have honest businessmen who know how to, clean things up, make things efficient, build infrastructure that works. And the key thing is hopefully that we can get a lot done in a short amount of time and then keep it. A republic, if you can keep it, right?
If you can keep it. Amen.
All right. So, any final words?
No,
we solved most of the world's problems. Actually, just looking here. I just got to share this. I am absolutely enjoying the mainstream media's epic collapse right now. CNN's looking at massive layoffs. Some of their main people are leaving. MSNBC lost half of their primetime evening audience already.
Aren't they thinking about maybe Comcast have to sell MSNBC or something like that?
Do what now?
Comcast, I think, they might have to sell them.
All I know is they had to buy a lot more cookies and milk to help people cope with the incredible emotional trauma.
I think Jeremy Boeing of Daily Wire
Yeah.
made the tweet. I think I don't know if he's joking or what. He's like, do I have to buy MSNBC now? Can you imagine Ben Shapiro? I don't know how real that is, but it would be entertaining.
Yes.
So.
Well, hey, never enough to talk about, never enough time to talk about. Actually, too much things to talk about, not enough time to talk about. So anyway, but a lot of you have been coming up to myself, or I'm sure Pastor Aaron gets his own moments, but just saying, hey, I met somebody on Sunday who was visiting our church from down south. She says, man, every week I do two things. I watch the podcast and I watch the Sunday church service. And so I just appreciate it if you guys are enjoying the time that we're spending together. Thanks for the feedback, and we appreciate it. Keep it coming. Also, as we look to chart a course for the future, just figuring out where we're going, what's important for you to hear, and maybe our perspective on things that would be helpful. Let us know. We love the feedback. Thanks for our fan club led by Sam. Sam, we love you. I haven't heard. I need to make a stop in to see you, but appreciate all of you that are officially part of our podcast fan club. And we probably need to get more organized with that. Some of you didn't even know we had one, but we
I
do.
didn't know we had one. Yeah.
My mom is a member, and Sam is a member.
There you go.
And I think there are a few
Founding
others out
member.
there, founding members. But there's room for all of us under this big tent
Yes.
called the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast. All right, so we'll see you guys next Thursday.